why no species will challenge humanity again. The Grand Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 17 advanced civilizations shifted uncomfortably in their anti-gravity seats. High Counselor Nixithara, her crystalline form reflecting the soft ambient light, called the emergency session to order, with 3 sharp taps of her resonant staff. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, her translator converting her harmonic speech patterns into standard galactic common, "we face an unprecedented situation. The newly discovered species from the Sol system, these humans, have demonstrated capabilities that—" She paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. "Concern us deeply." Admiral Zexathor, a towering Arthrodian whose chitinous exoskeleton bore the scars of countless battles, stepped forward. His mechanical appendages clicked against the polished floor as he connected his neural interface to the chamber's holographic display system. "Distinguished council members," his gravelly voice echoed through the chamber, "what you're about to see was recorded by our long-range observation posts near the human mining colony on Kepler 186F. The hologram sparked to life, showing what appeared to be a simple dispute between human miners and local wildlife. "Watch closely," Zexathor commanded, his compound eyes reflecting the footage. The assembled aliens gasped as they witnessed the humans' response to the threat, not with advanced energy weapons or force fields, but with improvised explosives made from mining equipment and a hastily constructed catapult that launched concentrated industrial acid. They used primitive chemical reactions and basic physics to achieve what our civilizations need advanced technology to accomplish, Zexathor explained, mandibles clicking in agitation. And they did it while laughing and making references to something called Mythbusters and YouTube tutorials. A murmur rippled through the chamber as more footage played. Humans turning terraforming equipment into weapons, repurposing agricultural machinery for defense, and somehow managing to weaponize their waste recycling systems. "Oh, please," a smooth, contemptuous voice cut through the concerned whispers. Ambassador Krell of the Valdorian Empire rose from his seat, his iridescent scales shimmering with disdain. "Are we truly going to sit here and tremble at the sight of primitives throwing rocks and chemicals? The Valdorian Empire has conquered civilizations far more advanced than these. These humans—" Zexathor's antennae twitched in warning. "Ambassador, with all due respect, you're underestimating them. Our psychological analysis suggests humans are the only known species that combines 3 troubling traits. They can turn anything into a weapon. They actually become more effective under pressure. And most worryingly, they seem to enjoy the challenge. The Valdorian Empire has never failed in a conquest," Krell declared, spreading his arms to display his ceremonial battle markings. "Our fleet stands ready to bring these humans to heel. They will make excellent additions to our labor force once properly subjugated." High Counselor Nixithara's crystalline form pulsed with concern. "Ambassador Krell, the Council strongly advises against—" "The decision is made," Krell interrupted, already striding toward the chamber's exit. "The Valdorian Empire will solve your human problem. When next we meet, Earth will be just another entry in our catalogue of conquered worlds." As the ambassador's footsteps faded, Admiral Zexathor turned to the Council, all 4 of his arms clasped in the gesture of grave warning. He has no idea what he's about to unleash. Humans have a saying that seems relevant here. Around humans, never assume you're the apex predator. The council chamber erupted into chaotic discussion, while in the background, the hologram continued to play footage of humans turning everyday objects into increasingly improbable weapons, all while cracking jokes and quoting something they called action movies. High Counselor Nixithara's crystalline form dimmed noticeably. "May whatever gods the Valdorians worship have mercy on their souls," she hummed softly. "Because if there's one thing our research has shown, it's that humans rarely do." The Valdorian Empire struck during Earth's Harvest Festival, a time when many colonial outposts were celebrating with their families. The massive warships emerged from hyperspace like chrome thunderheads, their plasma cannons already charging as they descended upon 3 human farming colonies simultaneously. Ambassador Krell watched from his flagship bridge, expecting the swift capitulation he'd seen from countless other species. The first sign that something was different came when his tactical officer reported an unusual reading from New Dakota Colony. "My lord, the humans are... They appear to be reprogramming their agricultural harvesters. And they're laughing." Krell leaned forward in his command throne as the holographic display showed dozens of massive farming machines charging toward his ground forces. The machines had been crudely but effectively armored with sheets of scrap metal, and their grain dispersal systems had been modified to spray highly flammable fertilizer compounds. "Impossible," Krell muttered as he watched a combine harvester, its threshing blades replaced with salvaged mining equipment, tear through an advanced Valdorian tank like it was made of paper. The human driving it was blasting something called Cotton Eye Joe over all communication frequencies. On the colony of New Brisbane, things were even stranger. The humans had somehow weaponized their weather control systems, creating localized storm cells that they used to launch electrified hail at Valdorian troops. Their defense coordinator kept transmitting messages like, "Welcome to the Thunderdome," and "Ride the lightning," across all channels. But it was the events at Nueva Santiago that truly began to shake Krell's confidence. The colonists had converted their entire hydroponics facility into what they called a Home Alone theme park. Valdorian Special Forces, the pride of the Empire's military, found themselves caught in an endless series of improvised traps. Soldiers were getting stuck in rapidly expanding farm-grade adhesive foam, tripped by repurposed irrigation pipes, and pelted with high-velocity produce launched from modified atmospheric processors. "My lord," his communications officer reported, mandibles trembling, "the humans are broadcasting something across all frequencies. They're calling it a playlist." Suddenly, the bridge was filled with an ancient human battle hymn that began with the words, "Somebody once told me." Krell slammed his scaled fist on his command console. "Where are they getting these weapons? Our intelligence said they only had basic farming equipment." His intelligence officer nervously brought up a data stream. "Sir, they don't have weapons. They're just turning everything into weapons. Private Zexkol reported being defeated by something called a potato cannon before his neural link went dark." The situation deteriorated further when the humans introduced what they called enhanced farming techniques. Automated drones originally designed for crop pollination were now delivering specialized pollen that triggered violent allergic reactions in Valdorian troops. Someone had programmed them to hum something called Flight of the Bumblebee as they attacked. "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted, "you need to see this." The main view screen showed a group of human teenagers who had apparently hacked several construction mechs. They were now engaged in what they called a Pacific Rim reenactment, complete with improvised sound effects and enthusiastic shouting. In orbit, human transport ships were executing maneuvers that violated several laws of common sense, if not physics. They were using the gravity wells of nearby planets to slingshot supply drops to besieged colonies with unnerving accuracy. Each supply crate was painted with what appeared to be crude artwork and phrases like "express delivery" and "special surprise inside." Krell watched in mounting horror as his elite forces were slowly driven back by farmers using fertilizer bombs, children operating weaponized agricultural equipment, and miners who had turned their tools into devastating close combat weapons. The humans showed no signs of fear. Instead, they seemed to be treating the whole invasion as some sort of entertaining challenge. "My lord," his second-in-command ventured carefully, "perhaps we should consider a tactical retreat to reassess our strategy." Before Krell could respond, a transmission cut across all frequencies. A human voice, sounding disturbingly cheerful, announced, "Hey there! We noticed you're having trouble with our automated defense systems. Have you tried turning them off and on again?" "Just kidding. We got them from IT tech support. They never turn off. Also, We're about to demonstrate our new rapid delivery system for returning your dropped equipment. Heads up!" The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as human engineers, using nothing but repurposed mass drivers from their mining operations, began launching captured Valdorian equipment back at the invasion fleet at relativistic speeds. Each piece of returned equipment was decorated with a crude, smiley face and a handwritten note saying, "Return to sender." Krell slumped in his command throne as reports flooded in from all 3 colonies. His invasion force was being defeated not by superior technology or military might, but by humans who treated warfare like some sort of deranged improvisational comedy show. And the worst part? Based on the transmissions they were intercepting, the humans weren't even taking the fight seriously yet. They kept referring to this as the warm-up round. Ambassador Krell's report to the Galactic Council was interrupted by the sudden appearance of 300 human warships, dropping out of what they casually called the shortcut dimension. The vessels bore none of the sleek aesthetics common to other species' designs. Instead, they looked like someone had bolted guns onto office buildings and taught them to fly. "You know," transmitted the human fleet commander, "we were perfectly happy terraforming planets and setting up farms. But since you insisted on making this interesting—" The transmission paused for dramatic effect. "Well, let's show you what happens when humans actually try." What followed was 3 hours of chaos that would be eternally burned into the memory of every spacefaring species present. The human ships executed maneuvers that their own engineers would later describe as technically impossible, but no one told the pilots that. They transformed their ship's waste heat into weaponized plasma, converted their communication arrays into electromagnetic pulse generators, and somehow managed to use their coffee makers as impromptu missile launchers. Operation Thunderclap, as the humans dubbed it, began with what they called a small demonstration. They positioned their fleet in a formation that most species' tactical computers dismissed as nonsensical. Then, using a complicated series of gravitational interactions that made several Valdorian physicists cry, they created what could only be described as an artificial supernova using nothing but mining explosives and precise timing. The Arthrodian scientific vessel monitoring the battle recorded Admiral Zexathor's observation. They turned empty space into a weapon. They weaponized the absence of things. How do you even conceive of that? The human response was broadcast on all frequencies. "Hey, you know what they say? Nature abhors a vacuum, but not as much as we abhor invaders." Multiple species watched in fascination as human ships executed what they called the space drift, using the debris field they had created as both shields and impromptu projectiles. Their targeting systems seemed to operate on principles that defied conventional logic, leading one xenobiologist to note, "They're not aiming where the enemy is, they're aiming where their gut tells them the enemy will be, and somehow they're right more often than not." The Valdorian fleet attempted to counter with their most advanced tactical AI, only to find that the humans had somehow taught their ship's computers to play something called 4D chess with Calvin Ball rules. The resulting battle patterns were so chaotic that 3 different species' combat prediction systems simply crashed, displaying the error message, "Insufficient imagination to compute." During the battle's peak, humans introduced what they called Plan B, which apparently stood for break physics in new and exciting ways. They demonstrated weapons that their own scientists admitted probably shouldn't work, but did anyway, including something they dubbed the probability inverter, which made unlikely events surprisingly common in their favor. "Look," transmitted one human captain as their ship performed a maneuver that made several alien mathematicians question their career choices. "Just because something has a 1,000,000 to 1 chance doesn't mean it won't work. In our experience, 1,000,000 to 1 chances crop up 9 times out of 10. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as human ships began using their enemies' own weapons against them in ways the weapons designers had never intended. They intercepted Valdorian energy beams and, through what they called creative frequency modulation, turned them into what appeared to be impromptu laser light shows synchronized to something called disco music. Most disturbing to the observing species was the humans' apparent enjoyment of the whole situation. Their battle communications were filled with quotes from something called action movies, and they seemed to be running an ongoing competition for what they termed the most stylish way to defy conventional physics. The turning point of the battle came when the humans unveiled what they called the final courtesy notice. Using technology that they had apparently developed during a particularly boring Tuesday afternoon, they transmitted a message directly into the universal translators of every alien species present. To whom it may concern, we've been holding back because we believed in proportional response. However, our latest poll shows that 9 out of 10 humans agree. It's time to show you why our own history books made us promise to be peaceful. Please note that what follows is still just a demo version. Terms and conditions apply. What followed was a display of military innovation that caused several species to voluntarily demilitarize on the spot. The humans demonstrated weapons based on principles that their own scientists described as technically theoretical, using technology that they had apparently invented just to see if we could. The Galactic Council's official record of the battle includes a note from High Counselor Nixathara. Most concerning is not their military capability, but their constant insistence that they're just warming up. Their transmissions suggest that their actual military technology is, quote, still in beta testing because the focus groups wanted more explosions. The battle concluded with what humans called a small preview of coming attractions. Using technology that they refused to explain beyond saying, "We got bored one weekend," they proceeded to rearrange several nearby star systems into what they claimed was a more aesthetically pleasing configuration. As the Valdorian fleet retreated in disarray, the human ships broadcast one final message. "Thanks for helping us test our new toys. We'll send you the feedback forms later." Please note that this demonstration used only publicly available technology. For information about our classified capabilities, please consult your nearest nightmare. The Battle of Proxima Centauri began not with weapons fire, but with a transmission. The human fleet, now fully mobilized, started broadcasting what they called their greatest hits playlist across all Valdorian frequencies. Ambassador Krell, still commanding from his flagship, was forced to watch as his crew became increasingly unnerved by an endless loop of "never gonna give you up," interspersed with something humans called dad jokes. "You know what the secret to space combat is?" the human transmission asked cheerfully. "Timing." A beat passed. "Speaking of which, you might want to check your synchronized chronometers. We took the liberty of resetting them all to different time zones about 3 hours ago." The Valdorian fleet's perfectly coordinated attack formations dissolved into chaos as every ship's computer suddenly believed it was in a different temporal reference frame. Their famous precision targeting systems, unable to reconcile the temporal discrepancies, began displaying error messages in Comic Sans, a font that humans had apparently broadcast into their computer systems just because we thought it would be funny. "Warning," announced the human fleet commander. "The following demonstration contains scenes of extreme violence and questionable physics. Viewer discretion is advised. Also, we've taken the liberty of translating all your emergency protocols into interpretive dance. You're welcome." The Valdorian flagship's bridge crew watched in horror as their emergency response systems began displaying instructions through animated emojis and auto-tuned warning signals. Their attempts to restore normal operations were hampered by the fact that their computer interfaces now responded only to knock-knock jokes. "Hey, Krell," came another transmission. "Know why we humans love space battles? Because there's always room for improvement." The pun was followed by the sound of rim shots and canned laughter, along with a detailed explanation of the joke for those who might have missed it. The psychological impact was devastating. The proud Valdorian warriors, used to conducting warfare with solemn dignity, found themselves completely unprepared for an enemy that treated combat like an open mic night at a comedy club. Their tactical officers reported increasing difficulty maintaining discipline as human ships performed complex attack maneuvers while playing something called yakety sax. The breaking point came when humans deployed what they called their culture shock and awe strategy. They began broadcasting comprehensive reviews of Valdorian military tactics, complete with rankings, witty commentary, and surprisingly constructive criticism about style points and presentation. "Look," transmitted the human admiral, "we appreciate the effort you're putting into this invasion, but your formation could really use some work. Have you considered jazz hands? Everything's better with jazz hands." Krell's flagship, the Pride of Valdoria, found itself surrounded by human vessels executing a maneuver that their tactical officers insisted was mathematically impossible and unnecessarily flashy. The humans had somehow turned their entire attack pattern into a giant moving QR code that, when scanned, linked to something called a YouTube compilation of epic fails. "Attention Valdorian forces," came the final transmission. "We've taken a vote, and we've decided to end this battle with what we call style. Please note that what follows is completely unnecessary and specifically designed to look cool. We just thought you should know that." What followed was a display that violated several laws of physics and at least one international convention on good taste. Human ships moved in patterns that spelled out "game over" in 20 different languages. Their weapon systems synchronized to create what they called a laser-light dubstep show. The Pride of Valdoria's final moments were recorded for posterity by multiple species observation posts. The massive flagship, Pride of the Valdorian Fleet, was disabled by a complex series of maneuvers that the humans had apparently based on that cool scene from that one movie. They had somehow turned the ship's own communication array into what they called a galactic jukebox that played nothing but the final countdown on repeat. As Krell's mighty flagship hung powerless in space, the humans delivered their coup de grâce. They reprogrammed its external lighting system to display a giant 404 Empire Not Found error message along its hull. The remaining Valdorian ships, their crews thoroughly demoralized by the combination of military defeat and weaponized comedy, surrendered unconditionally. The terms of surrender were delivered in the form of a PowerPoint presentation, complete with animated slide transitions and fun facts about human history in the footnotes. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began with an unprecedented sight. Ambassador Krell, once the proudest representative of the Valdorian Empire, entered the chamber wearing a human-made T-shirt reading, "I tried to conquer Earth and all I got was this lousy T-shirt." High Councillor Nixithara's crystalline form vibrated with barely suppressed amusement. "Distinguished colleagues," Krell began, his scales having lost their former luster, "I come before you to formally recommend immediate and lasting peace with the human species. They are—" He paused, shuddering at some recent memory. "Uniquely qualified to teach us all about humility." Admiral Zexathor stepped forward, his mechanical appendages now adorned with small, human-made stickers featuring something called Baby Yoda. "The humans have requested permission to address the Council," he announced. "They've promised to keep the memes to a minimum." The human representative appeared via hologram, casually sipping from a container marked World's Best Space Force. "Hey everyone. First off, no hard feelings about the whole invasion thing. We actually had a great time. Really helped us test out some ideas we'd been workshopping." The council chamber erupted in confused murmurs as the human continued. "So, we've prepared a presentation about our terms for joining the galactic community. Don't worry, we used minimal Comic Sans this time." The holographic display filled with charts, graphs, and what appeared to be carefully curated Space Cat pictures. "Our terms are simple," the human explained. 1. Everyone agrees to play nice. 2. We get to keep making jokes during diplomatic meetings. 3. Weekly movie nights where we introduce you to our culture. 4. No more surprise invasions. They mess up our coffee breaks. The voting was swift and unanimous. Several species actually tried to vote multiple times in favor, just to emphasize their enthusiasm for peace with humanity. The Arthrodian representative was heard muttering, "At least they didn't show the footage from what they called Operation Razzle Dazzle." The new galactic order took shape rapidly. Humans were appointed as heads of various committees, notably the Department of Creative Problem Solving and the Bureau of Making Serious Things Fun. Their first act was to rename the Galactic Defense Force to Space Guardians of Peace and Occasional Shenanigans. The lasting impact of humanity's demonstration became clear as species after species submitted requests for cultural exchange programs. The humans, true to form, organized these as a combination of educational seminars and what they called interstellar game nights. High Counselor Nick Sithara's final report summarized the situation perfectly. The humans have fundamentally altered the galaxy's understanding of warfare, diplomacy, and entertainment. They've somehow managed to make peace more interesting than war, primarily by introducing the concept of blooper reels to diplomatic proceedings. The Valdorian Empire, once the galaxy's most feared military power, transitioned into what humans called a space tourism hotspot. Their fearsome warships were converted into cruise vessels, complete with all-you-can-eat buffets and karaoke nights. Ambassador Krell, surprisingly, turned out to have a talent for singing human disco songs. Perhaps most telling was the addition to the Galactic Council's main chamber, a simple plaque that read, "When in doubt, don't mess with the species that treats physics like guidelines and combat like performance art." The human representatives' closing remarks at that historic session became required reading at every diplomatic academy. "Look, we're really easy to get along with. We love making friends, sharing jokes, and exploring space. Just don't make us get creative with our problem solving, because trust us, you haven't even seen what happens when we actually try to be intimidating. This whole thing, this was just us having fun. Let's keep it that way." As species throughout the galaxy adapted to the new status quo, one thing became abundantly clear. Humanity had achieved peace not through fear of their military might, but through the galaxy's collective fear of what they might do for an encore. As one Arthrodian philosopher noted, the truly terrifying thing about humans isn't their capacity for violence, it's their capacity for making violence unnecessarily entertaining. The final words in the Council's official record came from Admiral Zexathor. "We have witnessed a species that turned combat into comedy, physics into suggestions, and intimidation into entertainment. May we never forget the lesson they taught us. The most dangerous beings in the universe are the ones who can defeat you while making jokes about it." And so began the Great Peace, marked by regular game nights, occasional physics-defying demonstrations just for fun, and the galaxy-wide understanding that humans were best kept as friends. Because, as every species had learned, the only thing more terrifying than humans at war was humans trying to show off.